Hello and welcome to the show. This week's Downhill Chaos starts with a Honda Prelude. Yes, we've got another road car taking on this rather vicious downhill course. It's a very cool mod, this one, actually. The interior is hugely detailed on this car. Now, this is a front-wheel drive vehicle. We've only had one other front-wheel drive car go down here. There isn't a huge amount of them on Beam, and that was the front-wheel drive car that did go down here was the Covet. The Covet went relatively quickly. I wasn't sure quite what to expect from this car initially. It didn't take long for me to realise that there was some difficulties, shall we say, with driving the Prelude. The first thing is the suspension is quite bouncy. Now, we've seen a few of the big off-road trucks with their high-riding and relatively soft suspension having problems with bouncing around, but none of them have quite the problems that the Prelude does as it bounces and wheelies its way pretty much off the track. Yeah, once it starts doing that, the front wheels are in the air and I have absolutely no steering, and it will just continue to bounce its way off the course, and sure enough the car has plummeted to the bottom. The other problem is understeer. We've had a few of the rear wheel drive cars having massive amounts of oversteer and just spinning out on corners. Well, this has got big understeer. The Covet got away okay. The Covet didn't really suffer with that much understeer. This car does, and often when it does suffer, it kind of falls off the course in a spectacular manner. This time around, I'd already broken the rear suspension. As you can see, the wheel it was hanging at all sorts of weird angles. Now we're just going to bounce and wheelie our way down the course, but with a crippled rear wheel as well, it was only ever going to end up in a tree somewhere. Admittedly, that was one of the least damage done to the Honda, that crash. It sort of tore the rear wheel apart, but the rest of the car remained quite well together. Again, exactly the same place that I was having problems. On the exit of that first hairpin, if you ended up out wide, you couldn't stop the car from bouncing and wheeling its way down the thing. It's just the way that the course was and the way that the suspension was in this vehicle, it was just going to bounce, and no matter what I did to try and stop the damn thing, it was what it was going to do. More understeer, assisted by a bit of a bounce at completely the wrong time, and nope, we couldn't stop it. Couldn't stop the Prelude. Of all the cars I've driven so far, this one spent the most time tumbling off sort of long distances. A lot of cars hit trees, but not so many have fallen off quite such long distances. Amazingly though, the car survived. Because this is front engine, front wheel drive, you can do basically whatever you want to the back of the car, and it'll still keep going. So if it lands on the rear like it did that time, the Prelude is fine. It can continue to drag the back of the car along. Yeah, that's quite impressive actually from the Prelude to have survived that fall. The big ruts, of course, were causing problems. At that time there, it wasn't the bouncing, it was the steering that snapped completely after the jump, and then I couldn't steer the car to avoid going off the cliff there. Yeah, broken steering, not good. And of course, it wrecked the car. This car does deform pretty damn well. So when it does go for these big tumbles like we're going to have another one, it does take a lot of damage. We did a complete roll before clattering into a tree, and then there are some more rolls for good measure. And it was just the same problems again and again. End up a small bit out of position on the course, or try to carry a bit too much speed over a bump. Once the front end gets going, you cannot stop the damn thing. There's nothing you can do about it, so you have to be extra careful with the car. Again, different place this time. We can't stop it either. Brakes were not the best on this vehicle, or often the case was that once I needed to start slowing it down, it was because it was bouncing, and then once it's in the air, there's nothing I can really do to slow the car down. This time, we pretty much twisted the chassis at an interesting angle going on with this car when it eventually came to rest. A difficult car to drive down this course. It's a road car. You know, road cars are not really designed to be dealing with this sort of terrain. This is rather extreme terrain. Again, a huge bump. I'm trying to steer, and we're not steering. I thought I could ride that one out. I thought I could steer it out. Apparently not. And then we're going to cartwheel all the way down. It does roll nicely. It rolls and flips and cartwheels very nicely. Does the Prelude. We've now made a compact version of the Honda, but that's not necessarily good quality for getting it down the course. It took a while. It did take a while to get a clean run with this vehicle. I actually had to adopt a bit of a strange technique for driving this car to try and stop the understeer. I basically, every time I thought the car was understeering, I'd just yank the handbrake, and that would kind of sort it out. They're using the handbrake, and I don't just mean like for coming up for this hairpin, I would use the handbrake to get the car around. I mean, whenever it looked like it was understeering off towards the edge of the course, it would be a grab the handbrake, and it would kind of work. On this particular run, I did start getting it bouncing. I managed to slow it down in time so it didn't get too carried away. Yeah, the sort of using the handbrake thing was a little bit weird for me. So like here, it would be a grab the handbrake, try and get it turned, just briefly, only brief moments on the handbrake, and again there. It was the only method I could do to keep this car under control down here. It's yeah, a difficult course for these road cars. It is quite a lot of a car killer down here, with some big bumps for vehicles like this to negotiate. This corner was quite scary. Good cars can sort of run on the inside, or can run quickly through here with a wheel on the bumps on the inside. This, I'm not even going to bother trying. You can see even on the smoother outside line through there, it's still very nearly lost control of the Honda. This next bit here is one of the few bits where you can ever really get any speed up, but even with that, I daren't take much speed with the Prelude, because I knew that the minute we hit a bump it was going to be in trouble, so I had to be slow through the tunnel. And even then, we got some big bouncing going on from the Honda. Just a final couple of corners to go for this vehicle, and as I said at the start, it is quite an understeery vehicle, so while often this can be flat out in vehicles, it can't be. Can't be at all in this. As you can see, it's bouncing off towards the wall. Managed to get it slowed down, managed to keep it all under control with this car, but yeah, the bouncing makes it very difficult. Also, although while it's quite hard to show it here, there was some damage to the steering as well for the final few corners. I don't quite know at what point it broke the steering, but I was fighting for control of the vehicle through the final few turns, so yeah, that didn't help the Prelude either. Up next, we have got a Moonhawk, but a modified one. This is sort of an off-road racing version of the Moonhawk. I believe it is still rear-wheel drive. It is still rear-wheel drive. Has the same engine as the standard one, but it's a little bit beefier, a little bit bigger off-road suspension. And I was thinking this could be quite good for getting down this course. I mean, the standard Moonhawk did pretty well on its way down here, and I was hoping that this could go even faster. Yeah, definitely rear-wheel drive. After driving a front-wheel drive car that didn't have any problems with spinning out, I kind of got a little bit forgetful, forgot how slidey that this course could be, and then tried to take a bit too much speed through the first turn and promptly spun it. And then coming into this next one, have a guess what I may have done. Camera got a little bit unhappy with it, and we may have spun it around in a circle again. Yeah, I just forgot what it was like to drive a rear-wheel drive car down this course. They do tend to slip and slide their way around here, just a little bit. However, this car was remarkably easy to drive down here. I really didn't have too many problems until it came to the tunnel. I tried to carry quite a bit of speed on my first attempt through there, and it didn't really work. It may have just brushed, or trying to carry speed through the tunnel is very, very difficult in cars because of the huge bump on the inside. I mean, the Moonhawk is still working. It's still driving. It's still fine. But yeah, the engine's slightly twisted, the chassis is kind of bent up a little bit, and this was the only real problem place I had for getting the car through, just trying to make sure I got it slowed down and in control through here and not suddenly fired off out this side. It was just taking too much speed as we lose the spare wheel on the back. Again, the Moonhawk's okay. It's not got any. It's not broken beyond repair. It really didn't take too long to get a run out of this car. Provided you were careful on the throttle, it really didn't have too many problems. You will see taking a nice tight line through turn one here, trying to stop the car from sliding around. About the only place you can with a rear-wheel drive car here, certainly. How steeply the track falls away on that first corner. It's quite a scary corner to drive with some of these vehicles. Got to be careful into this turn. Make sure I don't do anything too stupid. You can't really chuck, certainly with the rear-wheel drive cars here, there's not enough grip to try and chuck them in there on the handbrake. You've really got to make sure you've got them slowed down, because otherwise you will just spin the cars out. And then around these next few corners, the Moonhawk's okay. We don't have too many problems. Slow it down. We do take a bit of a clonk on the front of the vehicle, again just making sure we get it slowed down for these bumps, but it's got sort of beefier off-road suspension, got that little bit more ride height, then it deals with the course pretty damn well. You can see here, I can get away with running a tighter line. It doesn't have so many problems on the inside of the course. Then we can try for a little bit of speed down here. It's still bumpy, you know, the car is still getting thrown from side to side, but it doesn't again, not having too many problems. Slow it down this time through the tunnel, don't clip the wall on the outside, and I've managed to keep the Moonhawk under control. Just a final corner to go, and it's flat out down here. Unfortunately, I catch a bump at an awkward place, end up a little bit overcooking it down there. I just get bumped around and sort of fired out wide. We clip the wall. I'm going to say clip the wall as we came through the bridge. We lost the tyre on the back again, done a little bit of damage to the side of the vehicle. But yeah, that was kind of in crossing the line. Before that, there was very little in the way of damage to the car. The off-road suspension dealt with everything. The course could ride it without any real issues. And yeah, the Moonhawk made it down to the bottom, and then we're doing some celebratory donuts with this car because yeah, why not? It was a lovely, easy vehicle, one of the easier cars I've had to drive. In all honesty, taking it down the course. Our final vehicle today is the Ford F250, another big, very big off-road pickup truck. This is another really ridiculously long vehicle. I'm not sure if it's longer than the Saddler that I had. They're probably around about the same size. It's a huge truck. Again, we've got some big ground clearance, we've got four-wheel drive and a decently powerful engine. My expectations for this were that it's probably going to be pretty good, but have problems with, you know, falling over and maybe even too bouncy a suspension. We've seen that with a couple of off-road vehicles being bounced around. Like they hit a small bump and it suddenly fires the car up into the air. I needn't have feared because this is the first vehicle that I have driven here that is actually well suited to this course. This is the first vehicle suspension that can deal with the bumps without any problems. Like the Moonhawk that just went was pretty good, but it still got bounced around a little bit. This really didn't have a problem with the bumps. And we've had quite a few off-road vehicles go down here already, but this, it was just remarkable how easily it dealt with them. Even on this first run, I was attacking that first bump a little bit too vigorously. We clonked the nose on it, and then I got a little bit on its side through the next one. But this could actually take speed over some of the bumps. It could take a decent amount of speed over them. If you got it wrong, you were still going to have a big crash, as we see here. If you get the angle a bit wrong, you know, you're still potential to roll it and to smack it into a wall somewhere. But you could take speed down some corners where other vehicles simply couldn't. Coming up towards the tunnel, I thought I'd go for it on the first attempt, seeing how good the suspension had done. Tried to go flat out. It didn't work. As good as the suspension was on this vehicle, it wasn't going to be flat out through there. Maybe with a huge amount of luck, you could perhaps get it flat out through there. Much like I got the flatbed truck through there flat out. If you got the bounce absolutely perfectly, then maybe, although there is still potential for you to be going too fast to actually slow it down for the next corner. As far as rolling over goes, well, it is still a big off-road truck, and it was possible to put the Ford on its roof, but it wasn't as much of a problem as I had with, let's say, the D-Series or the Silverado even, that went down here. Yes, if you got things very, very wrong, you could roll it, but it didn't really roll over that easily, and let's face it, everything could roll over if you got things wrong. The suspension, it was, again, if you got it just a little bit out of place, such as that one, I caught the bump at a little bit of a wrong angle, which then catapulted me into a tree. And despite being soft suspension, kind of forgiving suspension, I didn't have the same problems as some of the trucks of really bouncing it wrong through the tunnel. I did get it wrong that time. I just caught the back of the truck and sent it up into a front flip, a rather spectacular front flip. But yeah, the truck's still working, but the time's kind of gone a little bit when it's doing the flipping and twisting. This truck here, you could run the bumps on the inside if you wanted to. It was another case of you know, probably 50% of the time it'll work. The other ones you may end up on your side a little bit. It's still gonna roll over. It didn't take too long to get a run with this truck either, because it was that nice to drive. It really is about the first vehicle that I found that you could really attack the course, if you like. You could try and carry speed through places that other vehicles couldn't, because it would survive it. I mean, down here, the suspension is holding up to everything that that I can throw at it. The downside to this truck is a very large vehicle. Actually getting it around some of the corners is a bit of a faff. It's also not the most powerful, so acceleration isn't amazing. But that's a small price to pay for having it actually deal with the bumps. So that one there is a little bit nasty. It was a bit slow over that one. But I can carry such speed through here. No other vehicles really behave that well. Over that second bump, it could just deal with it. And again, this next one, when you don't sort of do a silly thing on the inside, you could take an awful lot of speed through that corner. I mean, there was very little in the way of braking that I had to do for that turn with this great big truck, because it could deal with the bumps. It couldn't be flat out through here, but could still carry good speed. And look, there's definitely the smoothest I think I've seen a vehicle on the exit of the tunnel, and then just one more corner to go as we run down towards the finish line. Those bumps that screwed over the Moonhawk so much, no problem for the Ford. Yeah, they just didn't affect it whatsoever. I was really impressed with this vehicle. It really did survive the course incredibly well. Damage-wise, I think we took a little bit. You can see the bonnet is a little bit bent up. I think that was on an early part of the course. I may have scraped the front on a little bit, but yeah, I mean it survived pretty well. I think I did have a flat tire come the end that it seemed to repair as I spun the wheels up. I think the wheels did take a little bit of damage on that run, but yeah, the Ford F250, very, very good truck. 120.9 puts it into third, fractionally behind the Silverado. It's just so big that you lose time through some of the tighter corners, and it isn't the quickest accelerating vehicle, hence why it's a fair bit down on the buggy, although it is definitely the nicest vehicle I've had to drive so far. Interestingly, the Offroad Moonhawk is slower than the normal one. Why and how, I'm not entirely sure, because it did survive the course better. It was nicer to drive down here than a lot of vehicles, but it was quite a bit slower. A 26.7 to a 24.3. I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that one. I mean, the normal Moonhawk was pretty good, but I don't know. That one there is a little bit confusing. And the Prelude, well, it struggled. It really did struggle with that understeer and bounciness of 51.3. Puts it at the bottom of our table. I thought we were going to struggle to find a car slower than the Corolla, but yeah, the bouncy Prelude had itself some problems. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. If you would like to have a go with the mods that I've used in this series, you can find the links to all of them in the description, so you can go and check them out yourself. But until next time, goodbye.